Hey everyone, Social Solipsist here again for another week of 52 and 52. This week, playing Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, First Assault Online, which is quite the mouthful there. This footage is actually a few weeks old at this point. I originally played this game when it was on a free weekend, I believe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, as of the time this will go up. It will be a free-to-play game once it is fully released. It is currently in early access with a paid closed beta, so you can pay a small amount to get in early and play the game. It is a Ghost in the Shell themed lobby-based first-person shooter, up to 8v8 on various maps. It is published by Nexon, who fairly recently also released Dirty Bomb, another similar free-to-play first-person shooter, that type of thing. It is much in the same vein. If you're familiar with Dirty Bomb, it's much in the same vein as that one. You have abilities and loadout changer that you can change your what weapons you're using on the fly between deaths and things like that. Currently, it is very much. I hesitate to call it a beta. I think it's a bit of a misnomer just because I'm really picky about that sort of thing. It's currently in a state where they're in ongoing development. It's not a beta of we're cleaning stuff up. They are constantly adding new maps and things like that. I think when I originally purchased it, there were only really about 3 maps, give or take. And I think they've added 1 or 2 more since I purchased it. Actually, I did not purchase it. It was purchased for me by my good friend Spencer, who linked to his channel in the description. This is footage of myself and my other friend, Red October, whose channel will also be in the description, when we were playing the free weekend there. Like I said, it is free to play. It will have well, it technically has microtransactions right now. It will have more once the game is in full release, I believe. Take your, whatever your opinions you have on microtransactions one way or another, whether you love them or hate them or kind of in between. They are, all the microtransactions for the game currently are cosmetic changes only, and I believe that will continue to be the case, although, Nexon has a long history of making some, shall we say, interesting development decisions. So I wouldn't I wouldn't count on anything being set in stone. As far as the gameplay goes, I guess we'll start with sort of general things. It's very fast-paced, quick fights and quick respawns, no more than 10 seconds for any given respawn, usually a lot less than that. So it's right back in the fight. It's not bullet sponge fights. It's very much, quick battles, relying on movement and tactics and stuff like that. Although, well, we'll get to that a little bit later. All of the different characters, when you first start up the game, it lets you select which character you'd like to play as, and basically it's an unlock for that, what I would call a class of character, which basically just specifies mostly what ability they will have, what their special ability is, and then a few other minor differences between the characters. The abilities are quite powerful and specialized, and they do synergize well. There's a sync feature where if you use an ability or an ally uses an ability, other allies nearby can, I'm going to simplify this a little bit, but basically can also use that same ability at the same time. So it might be going cloaked or moving super fast or getting an armor or a shield, or there's a couple of abilities that are just standalone and don't sync, but I believe there are 8 or 10 different character classes at this point, and you can unlock additional ones as you level up. You get like a credit to unlock a new character class, which I think is a good way to do it. It prevents people from just, I guess the way I would look at it is it prevents people from not ever getting good at a character and just like jumping around. Oh, I don't like this one. I don't like this one. You know, it kind of forces you to work on a character for a little bit before you're allowed to get a new one, which I think is a good way to do it. Unfortunately, on the other side, kind of the negatives of it, as a fan of Ghost in the Shell and of anime in general, it is not really Ghost in the Shell, at least not to me. It is certainly, cosmetically it is. It's skinned, you know, all of the characters, all the classes are skinned as various members of Section 9, if you're familiar with Ghost in the Shell. But it really does, in my opinion, a disservice to such an influential property in anime and in media in general. You know, it's a very influential, not only in anime but in the West as well. Things like The Matrix and stuff like that really drew very heavily from Ghost in the Shell. So, you know, if you're playing this just for the Ghost in the Shell stuff, you might be disappointed. It really doesn't do a whole lot to project itself as a Ghost in the Shell game, besides the skins and a few other minor things. It's not it's classic deathmatch and capture the point type of stuff. None of it is really reflective of what Section 9 is usually about, typically. Beyond that, the graphics are, I hesitate to call them ugly, but there isn't really a whole lot else to say. They are just not great. They're fairly generic. They're fairly, you know, gray and brown and matte blue. They're not inspired really at all. The textures are not high quality, although I mean there's only so much that can be expected of a multiplayer shooter, but that doesn't mean that other games haven't done it. And for all I know, this may change once it comes out of early access / closed beta. I believe the open beta will start fairly soon, but I don't actually know when that will happen. Beyond the graphics, I mean, there are some maps like the playtesting maps. Some of them are basically untextured completely, but the finished maps, or what I would call the finished maps, they just don't look great. Some are better than others, but the screenshots are not really reflective of what you get in reality. So if you're looking on the Steam page, don't be fooled. Watch footage instead, and you'll get a sense for it. That said, it runs really, really heavily. Even on my computer, which is admittedly 5 years old, but it is quite powerful. And tears through most things with ease these days. For technical reference, is a 3570K and a GTX 670 overclocked. And I cannot run this at a stable 60 in full screen. In full screen 1920 by 1080. It runs very heavily. I can hear my fans pushing real hard to keep both my CPU and my GPU, cool. And while that wouldn't bother me, the sound of fans doesn't bother me. The fact that I can't even keep 60 with quite a number of the graphical settings turned down is fairly concerning as far as performance for. Especially if you're playing on a laptop or something like that. I honestly have no idea how it might end up performing. I probably should have actually tested it on my own laptop to see how that goes. But something tells me it wouldn't have gone very well. Um, Let's see what else. The sound design, as far as sound effects, and especially there's a lot. I'm very picky with sound design in a number of different ways, but one of the things you really want from a shooter, at least I do, is I want the guns to sound satisfying, and they largely do not. And you know, it may be due to the budget or whatever, but that doesn't really to me, that's not an excuse of any kind. You don't get any, you know, satisfying ka-chunk, or you know, the sound of bullets leaving your weapon just don't. It's not what you would want from something that felt really good. I'm really not articulating this well, but I think those of you who know what I'm talking, or who are familiar with this sort of thing, will probably know what I'm talking about anyway. The gameplay itself when you're playing, I'm not sure whether it's the hitboxes or whether it's something to do with the netcode, but you are going to die a lot when you don't think you should have, and other people are going to survive a lot when you don't think they should have, and you will occasionally kill people that you don't think you should have. So something's going on there, and I mean, I presume it's not hitboxes, because I don't think they'd screw that up that royally, but something is totally wrong in there as far as getting those things, you know, sorted out. So if you are the type to rage easily and yell at the game for not behaving the way you think it ought to, this is probably not for you, at least not in its current iteration at time of recording. And sort of to add insult to injury, because it is an 8v8, you know, having one or more or one less character on your team versus the other team can make a big difference, especially if lobbies are not full. So when you've got a 4v5 and the game does allow that to happen, it can make a serious difference. So I mean, while I will give them props for making it very quick from one match to the next, you know, you basically, what happens is you pop out to a lobby for no more than about 60 seconds, and then you're back in the game as long as not everybody bails from the lobby. But despite team scrambling and rebalancing, the fact that it allows for unbalanced teams of any kind, even if it's, you know, even though it's just one character in an 8v8, it makes a difference. So I'm not real fond of that, and I'd be happy to wait, you know, an extra minute or so for them to, you know, find somebody else to add to the lobby to get it balanced out. So at the end of the day, my feelings on the game are, I don't want to say that it's not good, but it's not great. It's uninspired and not very good feeling. But if you are looking for a kind of throwaway shooter to play with some friends, that you can pick up, I think right now, if you want to get it right now, I mean, I'm not going to stop you. I think it's $5 for the base early access. And like I said, I believe it's going into open beta fairly soon. But yeah, like I said, if you're looking for something just to play with friends and kind of have a mutual disrespect for the game in voice chat with your friends or something like that, then you know, I think it's good for that. I got, you know, the $250's worth when it was on sale. You know, it's paid its dues. I've put about 10 hours in, just kind of goofing off, and it's good enough for that. But as far as being a competitive shooter of any kind, I don't foresee that happening, really, no matter how much development is done. It's just sort of the next in a long list of Nexon released stuff. They really do pump one of these out usually once a year, sometimes more often. So it wouldn't entirely surprise me to see this kind of stay at its current status. But anyway, I've talked for a while at this point. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.